So for me, that's where I get the $97 price point from, because my first deal I made 28 grand with less than $100 out of pocket. Well, about 100
Well,
bucks out of pocket.
yeah, this was almost $20,000.
Yeah, so I've invested that, and I can
Yeah.
tell you that it's worth it. It's because the information, is a tried and true thing.
Uh-huh.
Like my first venture into real estate, I picked up a book, how to invest in real estate with no cash or credit. That book
Uh-huh.
might have cost me $15, if that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I made 28 grand on my first deal because of that book. You know,
I'm going to try it again after I relocate
sure, sure,
and
sure.
and put more effort into it and not allow myself to get so distracted as I have been with family issues and health issues.
No, I appreciate
So,
that. Well, it's
yeah.
it's it's the I mean, trying is a good thing. I used to have a different opinion of it, but if that's the space you need to stand in order to take actions,
Uh-huh.
consistent with where you want to be, then I'm okay with it.
Uh-huh.
What I can tell you is the intention that I have with this organization and the programs and that I present is making it so you don't have to figure everything out. Like, I've already been down the road, and
Uh-huh.
so that's why it's important that you review the program, the
Uh-huh.
bootstrap blueprint that I shared with you, and then we can get a one-on-one conversation and design a plan specific for where you are, in the country, and also where you are, financially, where you are in real estate.
Okay. Okay.
And
Well, I
then,
will definitely review that.
yeah, and then I can, because the reality is, wholesaling might not be the primary thing that you use to get into real estate. You know,
Right. And I'm a veteran too, so I was going to purchase some property
sure,
and do that and maybe flip it in a year. But like I said, after I relocate,
yep,
I'll have a better. I'll be more able to really focus and get more involved. But
sure,
I appreciate it. I
yep.
really do.
You still have your VA benefit?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So so okay. So with that, and we'll get started in a minute. I'm just gonna allow for a couple more minutes for people to hop in, and then we'll hop right into it. Um, for me, I operate off a simple framework. It's the foundation, right? And so the foundation, we get into the formation of your corporations, things like that, and the
Uh-huh.
fundamentals around that, understanding, how to structure the entities, in an optimized fashion for funding.
Okay.
And we also get into finding off market deals,
Uh-huh.
or even finding, well, generating leads. Really is finding motivated sellers is what the goal is. That's the
Okay.
that's the first step, whether it's off market, on market, you know and then we get into funding, how to arrange for the financing part, and that's both conventional funding and also non-conventional, or and then we get into the fixing phase of it, or just the management part, you know
Uh-huh.
and then from there, it's the exit. It's how to close the deal, or how to flip the property if you're getting rehabbing, or basically just how to effectively exit. And that's the part that changes your financial situation.
Uh-huh.
And we get into what it looks like to build wealth. And that's I'm a believer of it doesn't take a long time to build financial independence. It doesn't take a long time to build financial freedom, because we're not using the traditional ideas that we're presented with in society. So with all of that said, I'm excited to work with you and kind of help you close the gap. And that's going to be a function of just your learning process and how effective you are at asking questions. That's where we need to get in. We need to put ourselves in that position to ask questions. And so thanks for being here. And we'll be doing this every week. I know I decided to do it on the Tuesdays nights and kind of mix it with the master class. And so the way that it'll function is the first part will be just the foundation of the Frankenstein Method. Basically, the concepts that I've learned about creative financing, how to effectively structure leads and deals. We'll get into wholesaling. We'll get into seller financing, lease options, subject to strategies, novations, joint ventures, partnerships. Like, we'll get into the mechanics of all of that.
Okay.
And then we'll actually talk about actual real life deals, real life leads that people are working on, and take it from there. And it's funny because in real estate is not as difficult as most people think it is, but it does require certain things to be successful. And if you make mistakes, it can cost you a lot of money. I know that firsthand. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars on deals, but for me, that's just the cost of admission. Like, that's I've also paid for big ticket coaching as well. 50 grand in one program, and I just spent $200 for another program, and I'm looking at another course right now at 7,500. And for me, it's a lot of things that I'm already aware of, but what I'm paying for is maybe access to the right type of legal documents, maybe access to another investor's process, or maybe access to their network, or just being around like-minded individuals, seeing how they run their business, that type of thing. Is, for me, it's more research and development. And so even having this program is a structure that I put in place, really for me. It's for me to practice, developing my skills, practice mastery of the business. And I really enjoy, looking at, different leads and trying to help, people creative. Like, when we talk about creative acquisition, that's the huge part of it, is the creativity. And so my goal is that you guys walk away from this program with a different perspective of how deals are put together, and really just empowered in building wealth through real estate and through business. So thanks for tapping in, and look forward to our one-on-one session, and we can take it from there. And Keita, congratulations again. She just purchased her first fix and flip project, and
congrats.
Yeah, we did
thank you.
We did a video walkthrough today. Man, that place was was messy, but
it was trash. To be honest, it was trash.
Yeah. But I've literally, believe it or not, I've seen worse. So that's par for the course. We don't buy the prettiest houses on the block. Most times we buy the properties that do need some TLC. So that's a part of developing the skills to see, the value behind all the trash and, the hoarder situation, and, just helping them, transition. And then we can get better at negotiating and structuring deals and things like that. So, my goal is to, again, help you develop the skills to be consistent in this business. And, for me, it's like I'm available. If you have questions, feel free to ask the questions. And, with that, we can succeed together and learn from each other and keep growing. So, but it's 8:15. And so, what I wanted to talk to you guys about today was, the Frankenstein Method and really just how we came up with the name and just the general concept. If you're familiar with the Frankenstein monster, that's a bunch of pieces, and put a little electricity or energy into it and breathes life into it, right? That's the Frankenstein monster. Well, the premise was Devon and I, we and another colleague of ours, Elroy, we have a mastermind group that, we hop in a Zoom and just kind of brainstorm on the weekends, and we posed the question of how to build $100 million business. And so we got to thinking, and there's a few things that are important when it comes to. Let me try to just do one thing. Record to cloud. Let's see what that happens. Okay. So there's a few things that happen when you get into any type of business, let alone real estate. You start with your vision or mission. What you want to hope to accomplish, and then you kind of put together, idea of what your, just what your goals are, as you progress, and then it's all about marketing, right? Lead generation. And so in real estate, we are focused on finding motivated sellers, and there's various levels to motivation. And so with my background, I've been fortunate to develop an understanding of a lot of things. And I come from a counseling background. Even in high school, I was a peer counselor. So sitting down with people, listening to their problems, helping them discover solutions for themselves and, make decisions for themselves moving forward has been a skill that I've been cultivating for a long time. And when I got into financial counseling, I took it serious. And so I do a lot of studying about different financial products, different financial strategies and concepts, understanding business, understanding investments. And as an investor, what I've learned is it's really about strategy. So when we talk about, again, wholesaling, when we talk about rehabbing, like your fix and flip, when we talk about, being a landlord, more of a buy and hold, we talk about private lending, that's just different levels of the business. When we talk about creative acquisition strategies, like I said, there's a lot of different types of creative ways to structure your offers, structure your deals. And fundamentally in real estate, if you can't get your price, then you have to get your terms, right? So if the seller's not motivated enough to sell their property at a discount, deep discount, then you have to be able to structure the deal where I always say it's a win-win-win situation. There's 3 wins. 3 is a win for the seller, win for the buyer, and a win for the team. Everybody involved in the process, the agents, the title companies, the insurance agents, the community, the city, like everybody's involved. And when the transaction works, everybody benefits. And that's a large reason why my business has been very word of mouth, because it's building a reputation, and when we talk about business, it's building your brand in real estate. A lot of people getting started, they'll use the bandit signs. That's how I got started. And on the bandit signs, I had "We Buy Houses." As I evolved in the business, now some of my signs say Gerald buys houses. And what that's done is that's branded me as an individual in my market. I also have certain signs with my company names on them. It's kind of like billboards around town and at my properties and things like that. Because as I'm learning about business on a different level, branding is a huge part of it. Even the concept, of me calling myself the real estate G, that was, something that I crafted as a function of being on Clubhouse. Is how do I set myself apart from all these people in the real estate space, different agents, different investors, professionals, and my name is Gerald, and I grew up in South Central LA, and there's a gang culture and gang life, and even though I avoided that growing up, that's still a part of my story and who I am, and also being a Christian, the G represents a number of different things, but it represents greatness, it represents gifted, and it's something that for me was a turning point in my life where I was validated in myself, like just a recognition of I've done the work, and to be on a platform like Clubhouse during the time when it kind of came together, a lot of people in home because of COVID and things like that, and to get validated by other investors, was really cool. And so, that's just a part of who I am now. And inside of the Frankenstein Method, that concept is where my gifts lie. And so I'm creating this program to help you guys understand the creative side of real estate better. As I always say, the mechanics of it. And so getting back to the main point, when you start off, it's and you're negotiating your offers, you understand that, you have your price and or you have terms. If you can't get your price, then you have to get the terms. And it's always good to, if you're looking to set up a creative deal, it's always good to understand the motivation, why a person wants to sell. It's always good to gather the information around the property, things like that. And those are all resources that you're putting together, or I call them ingredients that you're putting together so you can, present, an offer. And I'm always listening for motivation. That's why when I start, I always ask the question, do you want to buy it? Do you want to sell the house, or do you want to keep it? And I always start with that question, even if they got a for sale sign in the yard, because it speaks to their very core. Hey, Sharon, how you doing?
Good.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. So it speaks to their core. I'm just going to mute you for a minute. It speaks to their core motivation. Some people, they sell because they think they have to sell based on the circumstances. And some people, they sell because they just want to sell. So when I ask the question, do you want to sell the house, or would you like to keep it? You'd be surprised at the responses you get. Most people, well, yeah, of course I'm selling it. Like, you didn't see the sign? And some people say, well, I would have liked to keep the house, but, for these reasons, I feel like I have to sell. And so I actually walk in with my counselor hat on, and I look to educate them first. Well, look, if you're looking to sell, I mean, if you would have liked to keep it, let's talk a little bit about that, because if I could help you keep the home, is that something you'd like to visit? And, now I'm kind of going into the conversation, because in addition to the strategies is really how do you present them? What do you say? And part of the interaction with the seller is building rapport. When you go through my Bird Dog Bootstrap blueprint, when you go through the course, you are going to go through certain scripts. And hey, Shaitan, how you doing? You're going to go through a couple of different scripts. And with the scripts, the whole purpose of that is to help you understand what to say, because in addition to going over the different strategies like lease options and subject to and seller financing and joint ventures and how to raise money and all these things that we got to learn, right? It's helping you get comfortable with the concept, helping you be able to explain it, in a way where a seller can understand it. Because a lot of times sellers say no because they don't understand the structure. Everybody is used to a traditional sale. Like when you walk into the door, they got the house for sale. They're looking for cash. That's why I always start with the cash offer. And I also, it's a psychology to that. I'm anchoring in a lower number, and when I'm structuring the cash offer, I'm using the formulas that I know that my lenders use to underwrite the loans. And so that's where that whole ARV times 70% minus rehab budget minus wholesale consideration is how I do it, of like 20,000. That 20,000 is my room to negotiate. For me, that's kind of how I start the process. And so when I'm having a conversation and I'm looking to submit that offer, I don't submit it as a concrete offer. I kind of, shoot it across the table to see if I'm in the ballpark. I'm looking for them to see what their response is to a cash offer, and the typically lower. And that's the room for the dialogue. And I'm actually expecting them to reject the offer. Like I want them to say no, because I want the dialogue. I want to get an idea of, because what'll happen is when people typically tell you no, sometimes they feel like they have to tell you why they're telling you no. If if there's a mutual respect. And so if I throw, say, a $50,000 offer, I always frame it like, hey, based on this, and this, would you consider a cash offer of 50,000, or is that not in the ballpark? So you can see how if it's not a concrete thing. It's just, hey, this is kind of where I am based on, the values in the neighborhood. That's the ARV, based on the work that's going to need to be done. That's the rehab budget. And then I always say, I'm an investor, and obviously, it's important that I make a profit. But, for me, I'm more concerned with creating a win-win-win situation. Like I always say that. And that's for me to frame the conversation. I consider it a conversation. And I try for it not to be adversarial. I want to buy it at a good price that and I want them to feel like they're selling it at a decent price. And, and if there's a little give and take on both sides, that's good. And if I shoot a cash offer and they say, well, I'll take it, then that's cool too. If they say yes out the gate, though, I kind of feel uncomfortable because I feel like I could have done better. But even with that, it's if I can give them what they're asking, I give it. And I always tell them that too. Hey, what would you like for the property? Because if I can give you what you're asking, I would love to. That's a very true statement. And if I can't give you what you're asking, I'll be transparent and tell you why that is. And all the things that I lay out for them, is how I evaluate the deals as an investor. And I frame it that way. Hey, most investors, when they're looking at real estate, this is how they run the numbers. They're looking at the ARV. And I'm talking to them like this. They look at the ARV. That's the after repair value. That's kind of what the houses are selling for at the high end of the market, in their best conditions. Make sense? And I'll kind of check in with them as I'm having the conversation, and then so typically I'll take 70% of that, because as a business I want to work with a 30% profit margin, because that leaves room for the expenses like the cost of my financing, because I'm going to be using cash, or I may be using what's called hard money or private money. And I tend to pay double-digit rates of return on that money. So I need to account for that. And I always share that, because that's planting the seed for the seller financing option down the road. And so then when I get into the renovations, I never go into a house and point out all the negative stuff. I'm always pointing out the positive. I'm always pointing out the potential, the location, the bones of the house, the layout. I'm always looking for something to compliment them on. I really dislike investors that get in there and they kind of state the obvious. I'm gonna have to do the roof, and this is gonna need a lot of work, and like, okay, so if it's that bad, why are we even talking? Like, get out of here already. But I'm like, look, I'm interested. I'm your buyer. Here are some things. Obviously, the property needs work. I don't have to tell you that. And I might even say that, but it's not as bad as you would think. My only concern is I'm not a handyman, so I'm going to have to hire a contractor to do some of the work. And, so I have to account for that, Hold on one second. I'm sorry. What?
I'm hungry.
Okay, well, give me 10 minutes and then come back. So,
Bring me some food.
I'm in a meeting, sweetheart. Okay.
Bring me some food.
It's funny. The little kids. But anyway,
Jenna, you're in the meeting?
Peyton, fend for yourself. Make a sandwich or something.
Hungry.
So heat something up.
Nah.
Okay, I'm in a meeting.
Okay.
So,
Don't have to do with me.
all right. So, that's funny. He's a little kid. How many of you guys got hecklers for kids? But yeah, so I'm just having a dialogue. I'm having a conversation with them, and I'm educating them along the way. That's my style, is education-based marketing. And when they understand where you're coming from, sometimes they care, sometimes they don't. Some people just like, I don't care about none of that. I just want X, Y, Z. And like I said, I'm always listening for, okay, well, I heard what you want, but, can you share as to why that's important? Because again, if I can give you what you're asking, I would be happy to. Well, I got to sell the house because I have to take care of this. I got to pay this off, or I need a new vehicle, or, I'm always gathering information because, I have a lot of resources. And, what happens is people get in their mind their own solution to the problem, right? But there's more than one way to skin a cat. So for me, like in a pre-foreclosure type of lead, I understand that process a lot of the times. And most people, when they see pre-foreclosures and the homeowner's behind on the mortgage, they think in order to fix the problem, they have to come to the table with all this money, and that's not the case. If you know how to mitigate loans, you can mitigate the loan with the bank. They have different programs where they can throw the loan on the back end of the property. They can do what's called a partial claim, and that's a silent second loan, at no interest, and they could bring the payment current there. You can, those are all options to keep the house. They can do a modification which, it adjusts the rate or the principal balance or the term on the mortgage to make it a more affordable payment. So there's a lot of different things there that you're aware of. And some of you have had the privilege of hearing me talk to the bank and kind of go through that process. And in fact, Shaitan, if you want to speak to that, maybe just some of the things that you picked up just from the conversation when we were on the phone, I'd love to hear it.
Sure, with the bank or with our client?
No, with the bank.
With the bank. So Gerald called the bank with me. First of all, I'm Shaitan. He called the bank with myself and a person that I'm working with who is in pre-foreclosure. And when we called the bank, she called the bank first. So we were on a three-way with her. When she called the bank, they refused. I actually had her fill out like a third-party authorization so that Gerald could talk with them at the mortgage company. And they refused to talk with us. They told her that they needed a wet signature rather than a DocuSign. They just gave her a really hard time. And she mentioned to me that she had been trying to work with the mortgage company, and they stopped taking her payments after she lost her husband. So they wouldn't take her payments. She was trying to pay the mortgage. And then each time she called, they weren't returning her calls. So after they blew her off, then Gerald took the number from her and he called her so that we could listen in. As soon as they heard who he was, and he shared that he is a foreclosure specialist and that he was counseling her, then they said, "Oh, well, we'll talk to you, this one time."
Yeah.
Without any paperwork, without a signature. And so he just asked really, good questions, such as, how much does she owe? I mean, they actually went, even though I was already familiar with a program that they have, a grant that they're giving families if they've been affected by COVID or their employment has been affected by COVID. And she's retired, but she lost her husband. And so they shared that information with Gerald on the phone, that she could fill out this grant. He asked what the cap was, $60,000 cap, which she actually got her application in today. So I'm pretty proud of her, because when I called, she was just hopeless. And they had, just a very pleasant conversation with us as soon as Gerald stepped in. So then we debriefed after that call. It was pretty cool because she was so grateful and so appreciative. And Gerald just did a really great job. They were willing to talk with him, but they weren't willing to talk with the homeowner, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, they're trying to make her jump through all these hoops. And, I've had that conversation literally thousands of times. So for me, it's like, if you notice, I was very succinct in everything that I said and very intentional. And I let her do most of the talking once I prompted her on what our intentions was, and I have a course that I get into with the pre-foreclosure specifically. I'm going to share that in the Telegram. I hope all of you are in the Telegram link. I'm going to try to use that for a lot of the communications, just so that, if people are dealing with deals at the moment, things like that, you can pop questions in there, things like that. And then it's just updates on meetings. And, I'm going to be doing some impromptu videos and as I create content, things like that. So, but one of the things is, as a HUD certified housing counselor, that's actually they have a free training program. And I got a link for you guys to utilize that. It does take a little bit of time to go through it, but once you actually go through that training, because I just revisited it not too long ago, because I'm actually in the process of starting a housing counseling agency with a colleague of mine in Kansas City, Missouri. Once you go through that training, then you'll have a better sense of my foundation as a housing counselor, And then I'll, when I talk about the different strategies that I use for pre-foreclosure leads, it'll make a lot more sense, because when we're talking about creative strategies, foreclosure prevention is more of a type of lead, a lead source, just like probate is a different lead source, just like divorce or marriage, weddings, things like that. All of those things speak to a person's motivation, speaks to kind of pain points, like even the tax lien. If a person's behind on their mortgage, 9 out of 10 times they're behind on their taxes as well, because a lot of the taxes are included in the escrow, which if you're not paying your mortgage payment, then you're not paying the escrow. So, you're not paying the property taxes, and that creates a problem. So when we're talking about lead generation and, creating these different lists, the absentee owners, the cash, the out-of-state owners, all of that stuff, it's either investor related or, it's people that may have gone through probate where they inherited a home and they're so far away, they just don't want to deal with it. Like Shatan's client, she's has her own place now and she's just looking for that, to sell that, to take the money to cover her expenses, and because I didn't just assume the process, because I handle that call the same way all the time as if it's the first time I'm ever making the call. That's why, I prompt the lady, hey, this is who I am. I'm calling, the client has a financial hardship and we're just calling. We want to understand what our options are in this situation. We would like to keep the house. So that's important to say, you setting your intentions, because they either can keep the house or they can sell the house. And if they're going to liquidate in a pre-foreclosure situation, then, yeah, give me a little bit. If they're gonna liquidate the house in a pre-foreclosure situation, then they have options that are associated with that, like short sales, which is when you're selling the house and you owe too much on it compared to the market. I'm seeing a lot of reverse mortgages going into pre-foreclosure as well, and that has to do with the baby boomers, passing away. And a reverse mortgage, most people, they think reverse mortgages are a bad thing, and they're really not. Reverse mortgage is a tool that's available for seniors that own homes. Like most people, they buy a home, that's their primary investment throughout their life. And as they pay down the mortgage, right, they have no mortgage, but they want to maintain the house. And like if they're living off of Social Security, the only asset they have is the equity. And so when it comes to the house, you can either refinance, and if you don't have the income and or if you have credit issues, then you can't access the equity. So what do? Well, if you're over 62, then and you have equity in your home, you can, apply for a reverse mortgage. And what they do is they take the equity and they structure the loan in a way where you don't have to pay a mortgage payment. You just have to maintain the taxes and insurance on the property, and you have to, keep, live in the property, and you have to upkeep the property in terms of condition. And so that allows you to live in the house essentially until you pass away. And what happens is a lot of times when you have reverse mortgages, the people that are left with the house, the heirs, they always have a problem, because it's like, oh, they did the reverse mortgage, they ate the equity. And when people say stuff like that, it's because they have a low financial IQ, because that's not, that's the equity was the grandparents, the homeowner. Like it was like if your mother, you grew up in the house, that was your mom's house, or your dad, your parents' house, that was their asset, And if they needed the money to survive, to live their life, then that's their prerogative. Ideally, yeah, we want to leave a legacy, but there's insurance that you can do that with. There's other investments, things like that. And so in certain cases, it makes sense to do that. You just need to know what those situations look like, and then you can make an informed decision. And like that's what this is all about with the Frankenstein method. Is there's a lot of creative acquisition strategies that exist. Once you understand the mechanics of how they work, then you'll know when to use what strategy based on the situation. Does that make sense? So in the situation that I'm working on with Shaitan, like right now, we need a purchase and sales agreement, and I just added some new language in the contract that provides an option to do what's called a novation, and that's why I ended up joining Jeff's program, because I needed to get that actual language for my contracts, because again, with the novation agreement, that allows you to make more offers, higher offers on different properties, that need repair typically. And so it's like being a doctor. When you know what the symptoms look like, then you know how to diagnose the solution. That's what we're talking about here. And so then it becomes having the proper documentation, having the proper clauses. And so in the course, definitely reading through all the documents. If you have any questions on anything that you don't necessarily understand, like let's have those conversations so that, we can get you educated and up to speed in how to use these, and certain things that how to communicate it, like that's important because in certain cases, when you look at the strategies that we use outside looking in, a lot of third party people are like, why are you doing that? Why not just list it with an agent? Or why are you doing that? Well, when I talk with the seller, like I got a novation situation right now, talk with the seller, and the lady still living in the house, elderly, didn't want a whole lot of people walking through the house. Most of the agents that she talked to, they wanted her to clean up the house, and she didn't have the money to do it. They wanted her to make certain repairs to the property. She didn't have the resources to do it. And so they made her feel uncomfortable with the process of selling the house. And it was because they was approaching it like a traditional agent and not really looking to service the client, more looking to, create a product that they can sell, and capital maximize the sales price so they can maximize their commission. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a missed opportunity. Like with novations and with subject to, a lot of the leads are expired listings. So expired listings, like all of us right now could call up an agent, or if we are agents, just start looking for expired listings and following up with those homeowners and seeing, hey, I noticed you wanted to sell and you couldn't get your price. Would you be open to me taking over your mortgage payments? If I could, pay a little bit more, or however, you word it, right? It's going to be practice. Some of the stuff you're going to suck as when you're getting started. But it all works itself out over time as you understand it. And one of the things that I'll do often is I'll share different YouTube videos with you guys that I've gone through that talk about these different concepts from people that I respect in the business. Like today, I was watching a video from Myron Golden and Dan Henry, and they were talking about sales, and it was some really good information in that video. So I shared it, and one of the things that we'll be doing too with the group is reviewing these videos and then having discussions about them, because that's where the creativity comes into place. Seeing how other people look at different things. And then a lot of you have experiences in your own right. Why I'm creative in the foreclosure space is because that was my profession. So it doesn't make me any better or any smarter or any, like I had, in my career, I was fortunate enough to be trained as a housing counselor, and then 2008 happened, And, I'm seeing all these people behind on their mortgage. And I literally said to myself, hey, I know how to help these people. Because me and my partner, we was trying to figure out the wholesaling thing. And 1 minute the strategy was working. And then the next minute it didn't work. And we have all these leads and we're throwing them in the trash. And I'm like, man, this, I can actually help these people. And so that's what I started doing. I started typing up a letter and I just started going over their loss mitigation options. Hey, I don't know if you contacted the servicing company, but you can give them a call, talk to them about these options. If you need some help, give me a call. And then people started calling me. And so then I do what I always done is I got a mentor that had more experience in that space. And then I just let him teach me how to do it. And I would just listen to him on the phone with the bank. At times I get very aggressive with the bank on behalf of the client because I know what to say, what not to say. I know how to push the buttons. I understand their process most times more than they do. And then I'm also humble enough to learn something. Like when we was on the phone, Shaitan, she was educating us. She said, look, she even told it, if you really listen to it, she told us how to handle it. She said, look, this is what you do. Apply for that. If they give you the 60, like you behind 75. So if they give you the 60, maybe you can come up with the 15 and then we can reinstate it that way. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. So we're going to get the 60. And she even made it seem like, look, we'll work with you to make sure we let you get what they're going to give you. And then we can always revisit it. So for right now, do that part, and what was, a situation where we was only going to give her like maybe 10 grand, maybe 15 grand. If we get that 60,000, we could split the difference because the property needs work. And she was already prepared to get the 10, 15 grand. So if we say, listen, we can give you 45 grand or 40 grand, now rather than pay 1 year's of the rent, that's 2 years of the rent. Man, that lady gonna be our best friend.
She loves us already.
She's
sending me really nice text messages. She's very grateful.
Yeah. So that's why we gotta get the contract, because what's happening is we're taking the pain away. And if you don't secure your position, that allows for other people to kind of come in and influence the situation. And then people start backing out of agreements, because you've already done the work. And that's a problem that I often have because I'm not motivated by the money. So a lot of times, because it just comes natural, I just saw the problem. I had a conversation this morning, $10 million deal. And I'm just listening on the phone, asking certain questions. The lady told me what the situation is. I'm like, okay, so this is what I need to do. I need to talk to the seller. If you can make that happen, I can have this deal wrapped up by Friday. And she was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because I know how to bake the cake. And you got all the ingredients in the cabinets. Like we got the milk, we got the flour, we got the eggs. We got it. It's already there. I just need them to say, okay, I actually like cake and I'm down. Like that's it. And so when I talk to them, I'm going to be really listening to what their concerns are, if they in fact want to sell the property or not, or, and then what I'm going to do is structure the deal in a way where everybody, it makes sense. So they get their price, we get our terms. The money is already there because, see, in a pre-foreclosure situation, what you don't understand is there's already a funded property. The house is funded. The issue is it's just in default. So if you address the default situation using one of the programs that they already have in place to address the default, and it makes sense to maintain the payment once you clear that up, then you don't have a problem anymore. You just got to fill out the application. But what happens is, and this is why we have a competitive advantage, most people in the real estate space, they don't approach things newly every time. They operate as if they know it already. And so when you do that, you make mistakes because sometimes you make action off of outdated information. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've been calling the bank, and sometimes they want a lot of information. Sometimes they just want a few questions answered. And I call them, like I got the property I have in Peoria. When I called initially, they gave me the deadline date that I had to have the application in. So I waited till a day before the deadline, and I sent in the application, and then I called them to make sure that they received it. And I said, hey, just calling, you know, looking to keep the house, sent in the application, want to be considered for assistance. She's, you know, and I said, I'm just calling to see if you received it, you know. And she was like, you know what? We just changed the process. I can actually take your application over the phone and streamline you for this particular program. And I said, well, yeah, absolutely. So she just did that. And she's like, you know what? You actually qualify for the partial claim program. Basically what that is we're going to take the $9,500 that you owe, and we're going to make it a silent second mortgage with no interest. And it'll just sit there on the mortgage and on the title until you either refinance or sell the house down the road. You know, and I said, all right, that sounds good. You know, when will I have to start making my payments again? And she was like, in July. I said, okay, do you have an idea what that payment's going to be? She told me 600 and something. The payment is $635.81. So now the house doesn't have a lot of equity in it. It's outstanding about $85,000. The after repair value on the property is between 100 and maybe 140. I'm new to that market, so I'm very conservative, and it needs about maybe 20 grand worth of work. So if it has 85 outstanding plus 20, that's 105. But the mortgage is only $635.81, and I checked Section 8 today, and Section 8 pays $1,270 for a 3-bedroom house in Peoria. So once I renovate the property, I put a Section 8 tenant in there, and I'm making $500 a month on autopilot.
I wondered why you put that house in the chat. I didn't know if it was for me.
Hey.
Like, who are you sharing this with?
Because I don't live in Peoria, so I was willing to sell the house for $10,000. Because what happened was my student, I was negotiating for him. He wanted his mom to move in the house. So I was like, look, for this deal, just pay me my 6-month fee. It's 10 grand, and you can keep the house. And I'll call it me just coaching you through the deal. So he didn't want to pay the money, and he doesn't like how the pre-foreclosures take all this time. He's like, we've had control. I've had control of this property for 3 months now. I got control of the property in 4 days. You know, met the dude on Clubhouse. He mentioned the deal on the stage. The moderator, they don't specialize in foreclosure like I do, so they're not gonna see the deal. You know, in fact, he said, "Oh, that's not a deal," because on the surface, when you do the numbers, it's tight. But if you use the right strategy, like subject to, and you know how to execute it, that's easy. So I tied up the deal with a leasing option. He literally had the keys. I told him, get me on the phone with the seller. Got on the phone with the seller. I said, hey man, you want to keep the house or you want to sell it? He was like, well, I'd like to try to keep it. You know, I was thinking of moving my sister in there, this and that. I said, well, you know, first things first, let's call the bank and see what they talking about. So we called the bank. I found out exactly how much he was behind. And part of the problem was the basement had backed up, so it was flooded, and it needs some work in the basement. So I asked him, do you have the $9,500 to reinstate the loan? He was like, no. I said, more importantly, do you have the money to address the basement? And he was like, no. I said, okay, so what did you put into the property when you bought it? He was like $3 grand. I said, okay, so what if I took care of all these outstanding issues and I gave you back the $3,000? And what I'm going to also do is throw you into my credit repair program, and I'm going to work on your credit for a year and to basically assume your payments. Is that something you might be willing to consider? He was like, yeah. I was like, okay, so this is how it's going to go. I'm going to work with the bank to address the mortgage and get that squared away so we don't have to worry about the foreclosure, and that's what I did. So now this is the part where some people might say, well, that's maybe a little unethical. I already knew that I could get the bank to remove the 9,500, but that's my specialized knowledge, and the reality is when I asked him about keeping it, he wasn't set on keeping it. Like if he was like, gee, this is my house, like he doesn't live at the house, he hasn't been responsible with it. It's a little overwhelming for him. So, and then the other thing about it too is, I could structure the deal in a few different types of ways, but I would rather just make it clean, give him his $3,000, fix his credit, and then, maybe help him buy something else down the road, and just take over this. And it's not like I'm getting it at a deep discount. I'm just getting it at a reasonable rate. So it'll cash flow, and it's like an automated savings account, because every month I'll be making like $400 or $500, and then I'm gonna probably have to put about 10-15 grand into it, and then as the Section 8 pays the mortgage down, it's gonna add appreciation and have depreciation as well, and so that's the deal, and that's what the subject to. Yeah. So the next step for me on that one is I just have to set up the trust. And once I have the trust, that's when I'm going to meet up with him and have him sign to move the house into the trust. And I'm going to pay him the $3,000, and then that'll be done. But right now, I have a lease on the property, and I have an option to buy it at whatever the outstanding balance is on the mortgage at the same time. And I was just watching a Pace Morby video, and he's explaining this stuff, and I'm laughing because like this is just stuff that I figured out over the years, and this dude, and I respect him a lot because he built a big business. He's doing some stuff on a different level, more systemized, and that's the disadvantage that we have a lot of times is, as minorities, we haven't necessarily been exposed to business in that way, and so I'm definitely taking notes, and for me, I know that I'm at an advantage because I can compete, and the only reason why he's dominating is because he's doing some very specific things better, But this is the thing about it. Now that he's laying out the blueprint, I'm going to step on the scene and beast it. And because I'm going to collaborate with him. That's the other part. See, when a person has a head start, they're paving the way. And if you know how to catch up, you can catch up, and rather compete, just run together. That's the problem with black folks is we feel like we have to compete with each other. That's why sometimes we get envious of others' success when what we really should be doing is celebrating each other, because the fact of the matter is if you've made it, that just means it's possible for me to make it as well. And if we're leaving our hands out, then I spent a lot of money learning, a lot of trial and error learning this stuff, and I do my best to make it affordable, but then I have colleagues that's like, gee, like, bro, you gotta get paid more for your time. And it's like, I can appreciate that, but I haven't been led to do that yet, because I'm different in the sense that I would much rather partner with you and we make money together, and then charge you all this money and make your entry into the business harder. Because a lot of these courses, they're 20,000, 30,000, like 50. I got a guy that paid 80 grand for some stuff that cost me 25, a few years prior. And my contract and agreement is better than his. And he paid 3 times, 4 times more money, and I see the value in both of them because I've been around longer. And so for me, I don't care what it costs, because I'm focused on what is it costing me not having the information. Like, that's a real conversation to have with yourself. Like, I believe the Financial Moses had posed a question. He said something about, what is it costing you not making $1 million? And then he did a diagram, and he's like, what if say you make 60 grand a year, right? What does it cost you not making $1 million a year? It's like $940,000 a year that is costing you. And why that's relevant, right? Why that's a relevant question is because the fact of the matter is, it's a bunch of people that make $1 million a year. And when you really look at them, they're no different than we are. They do certain things slightly different than we've done it. And it's only because they've been exposed to different things different than we've been exposed to it. And like the last few days, I've been really pondering that question because I have a high level of understanding about a lot of things. And for me, it's like, my problem is I'm hands-on with everything. So I'm making that transition. If you've ever heard about the cash flow quadrants, I'm making that transition from self-employed to business owner and investor, like as we speak. And I have a few things in the works that's it's gonna break the game. Like, it's crazy stuff, and I don't share it because I have shared it. And what you get is you get a lot of people that don't understand what I'm talking about. So it creates disbelief. And then they alienate themselves. Like when I made the statement that I make, and so my net worth is over $200 million right now. Now, understand, I said net worth. When most people hear that, they think money in the bank. And that's not how this game is played at the highest level. Like, Jeff Bezos is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Mark Zuckerberg, hundreds of billions of dollars. Elon Musk, hundreds of billions of dollars. A lot of that money is calculated based on equity in their corporations that are publicly traded on the open market. And so some of these businesses aren't even profitable businesses. They're just being sustained by the market. Like Tesla and Amazon for a long time ran in the negative. Apple Computer is $1 trillion company, and Steve Jobs, he owns maybe 10%, if that, but his ownership is valued at X amount of billion because of these concepts, but we taking our QuickBooks type of mindset and looking at this high finance stuff as if we understand it. And it's a different game. And the reason why the process in which I started this company and then got evaluated was like 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks. I had a funding round. I did an equity swap with my mentor that's walking me through the process. his business is more established, so he funded my business with shares of equity in his company. And so by doing that, that added a certain liquidity to my financials, and that's what I used to get a third party validation company to go through my books and validate the company. Now, they did that based on the funding round, and it's similar to like Silicon Valley, where you have these tech guys that have these ideas, and so what they do is they create a pitch deck, which is basically a PowerPoint presentation about what their ideal is, what problem it solves, and how they plan on making money, right? And so they make this pitch in front of venture capitalists, and these venture capitalists, they go around and they invest in these ideas based on how well the pitch was put together, how confident they are in the founder, and they'll bankroll this stuff because they're conditioned to say, all right, if I invest in 10 companies and just one or two of them explode, I'll make 100x on my money. So I'm willing to put a little seed money into these other companies and see what they do. Case in point, Clubhouse. How does Clubhouse make money? It doesn't. But what Clubhouse has is it has a lot of subscribers, and it has engagement. And it was a timing thing. And the founders of Clubhouse, they made a mistake. They got offered some money to cash out, and they should have took it. Like, I think it was like $4 billion or something. They should have took it because there's other competitors out there like Twitter Spaces and other audio platforms. There was the first audio platform. No, that wasn't. Was it? No. That was a streaming platform. There was a streaming platform that came out some years back called it was called Meerkat. Meerkat came out, and that's when I changed to iPhone because Grant Cardone was on Meerkat, and that's my mentor. So if he's doing it, then I'm doing it. And Meerkat was booming until Twitter had Periscope, and then Instagram doing Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives. And when all these other platforms started doing that, y'all probably don't even know what Meerkat is. You know? And so for me, it's a mindset shift. And I was listening to something the other day, and they was talking about small businesses, right? Starting a small business. And the point they was making is like, why are we starting small businesses? You know, why aren't we just starting businesses with the intention of making them big businesses? Fortune 500, Fortune 100 corporations. Like, my company is set up as a tech company, right? And like I said, it has a $209 million valuation. So most people will hear that and say, oh, that's not real. And they don't understand how stuff works. Right now, I have a team that's working on my app because I'm a tech company. My mentor said, you want to be a fintech company, you're in technology, you need an app. I said, okay, no problem. Say less. So I got a bunch of people that I know that are developers that can create the app. So I called them up. Hey, this is what I'm doing. And I said, look, I'm in the early stages of a pre-IPO, building a fintech company, and I'm developing an app. You have a particular skill that I'm looking to engage, and would you be willing to do some work for equity in my company? You know, and my intention is to go public in this amount of time. And so at that point, you know, that'll be your liquidity event. And in the meantime, once we have the app up and running and we're making money, then I can revisit paying you for your services, blah, blah, blah. So it's like a sweat equity agreement is what I'm working on. And I'm creating a game because of one of my colleagues, Elroy. He's in the gamification space. So with the gamification space, I'm creating a financial literacy product, and I'm also creating a financial intelligence product, because I'm clearly seeing the distinctions between the two. And there's some critical things that we need to understand about finance that we haven't been taught, like about accredited investors and non-accredited investors and sophisticated investors, and what those even are. How do you even qualify? We got a bunch of people walking around accredited, they don't even know. And why is that important? Because if you're an accredited investor, then you can participate in private equity offerings. Fundraisers, these rich guys, the VCs, they raise money from private people. And they're actually allowed to raise money from you now. And this has a lot to do with Obama, in the Jobs Act of 2012. For all the things he didn't do for black people, that's one thing that he did that made a major, that opened up a major door for us to build wealth. The problem is it's so foreign and we're not accustomed to the conversation. He made crowdfunding legal. He made it less paperwork. Like, these were certain things that were reserved for the wealthy and the white. And now we can go out and raise capital with less scrutiny from the SEC and things like that. Reg D offerings, Reg B offerings, Reg A offerings, that type of thing. Like, all this stuff is things that you need to learn, over time. Like, it's not you're not going to learn it tonight. You're not going to know everything, but part of my job is to expose you to what's possible in this space, and meet you where you are. And I'm going to accelerate the process. And it's possible for you because it's been possible for me. Like, these are things that I'm doing, and the last thing I'll say about this part is this. I'm watching Pace do what he's doing, and he's making a bunch of money. And he's generating a lot of revenue. And he hasn't tapped into the strategies that I'm using. And if he did, it would be a 10x event. And that's the stuff that makes me laugh inside, because, like, when we as a people start really understanding who we are and how, because we had to get it out of the mud, or because we had to go through these different challenges, and we consistently over time make something out of nothing. Like, that's what creative financing is. It would have been so easy for God to have educated me about real estate, using credit, using my job. Like, I got a degree in finance. I started college as an accounting major, and I understood the numbers and all of that stuff. And I was a credit counselor, like trained credit counselor with bad credit, and then Clubhouse comes around, and like things that I've been trying to understand about credit for years, I got some relationships with some of the most talented individuals in the business credit space. Like, the timing of everything right now is crazy, but I'm a beast when it comes to them, because even though they know how to use credit, I'm doing all this stuff with credibility and creativity. And that part right there is like, man, like, I don't even worry about my credit. I don't worry about it. I had a conversation. I'm working with Herman on a deal he brought me in on. $90 million deal, $80 million deal. And I get a call today from one of the brokers in the deal, and he was just following up because he's like, where you guys coming up with this money? And I'm so prepared to have a conversation with him. So I called him back, and I made him wait, because he called me. I told him 5 minutes, and then I made him wait, because it's all posture. So I called him, hey, Scott, I apologize for the delay. I was actually on the phone with a colleague, and we started talking about money she wanted to deploy. So obviously I stayed on the phone. He's like, yeah, I understand that, get the money. So we started talking, and he's like, okay, well, cut to the chase. Like, where are you guys coming up with this money? And so I'm like, well, I already got 50 million committed, soft committed. Well, what does that mean? Well, this is what it means. It means that when I got the deal, I contacted some colleagues of mine that represent some family offices that are looking to deploy some money. And because the deal is related to the VA hospital and working with the government, it's really attractive. And I know that I can provide them with a solid return, but we just got to do the due diligence. And I got to know, how long this is going to work out with, how long this is going to take for the government to contract the deal if they're going to do it. Like, that's the dilemma. And he's going through the information. But what he doesn't understand about me is everything that he's telling me, I'm taking him to my head and I'm using it to understand how to structure the deal and what I'm listening for his pain points. Because if I can present my offer as a solution to their problem, then we got a deal. And he said something about, he was like, well, the government's going to take some time. And I'm like, well, how long you think they're going to take? He's like, probably easily 6 months. And I said, okay. And I said, well, we are dealing with a bankruptcy. How long do you think that process is? He's like, about the same amount of time. I said, okay, so we got the same timeline. So that's not as big of an issue. We just need to we need some commitments from the government. He's like, yeah. And he's like, really, your offer is different because you're offering to buy all the properties. It's like 6 different properties downtown Philly, like skyscrapers. And so he was like, yeah, we got offers for certain properties, certain pieces of the property. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool. So what I could do is I can get this under contract, and then I can wholesale off these other buildings to these other investors to raise some of the money. And then I just got to focus on these 2 buildings, which are the biggest problems for the whole situation. They're not looking to sell the other buildings because if they sold them individually, they would still be left with this big issue. So right now, they're formulating a letter of intent. And in their letter of intent, they're going to tell us basically what they would be willing to accept from us. And then they're looking at, if they give me the letter of intent, I can take the letter of intent to go and secure the money, which is kind of true. My money is going to be predicated on what the hell the government's going to do as far as moving the VA hospital to our location. And then also, who's going to pay for the renovations of the building? How much is that going to cost? How long is that going to take? And this is the key question. Who's going to cover the debt? Who's going to service the debt until this thing is cash flowing? So with real estate, and this is how creative financing works, those are the questions that you're answering. How is the debt going to get serviced or covered? Like, who's going to cover the debt? In my deal in Peoria, if Section 8 is paying $1,270 and the mortgage is 6 something, that's the solution to my problem. So even though I don't have a bunch of equity in the deal still cash flows. And so if I've ever talked to you guys about my debt positive strategies, it's not about debt free, it's about debt positive. And what debt positive is I only accumulate debt to increase my cash flow or increase my equity position. So I use debt for what it's intended to be used for, as a tool to build wealth, because I'm focusing on increasing my net worth and increasing my cash flow. And I'm creating assets and creating income producing assets to add to my balance sheet. That's why in my course, I go over your budget. I go over the debt snowball as the debt management, because you guys need to get comfortable with managing debt to build wealth. You know, it's the caveat. It's not just managing debt. If we're just talking about debt, then yeah, you might want to be debt free. But if we understand debt at another level, and we know that, okay, other people's money is a tool that I can use to build wealth. And then the thing about money is, when you have money, you have a responsibility to put that money to work. Like, that's how the circle goes. So these family offices, you know, and it's a real, like, when I said I had a soft commitment, I do. I called up my buddy that's a broker, and I said, hey, I got this deal I'm working on. I'm about to have a meeting. It's going to be about 15 of us in there. And I said, I know you have relationships with some family offices. I know you have relationships with some different lending institutions. What I need from you is a soft commitment for $50 million. It doesn't have to be binding. I just need a soft commitment. And he was like, well, gee, like, do you need me to put it in writing? I said, no. Do you need me to, like, are you going to use my name? I said, no. Well, what are you talking about? I said, this is the deal. This is what I'm doing. But I need a soft commitment for $50 million from you. And he's like, why? I said, because I'm about to go into this meeting and I'm going to tell them that I have a soft commitment of $50 million. And when I tell them that, I want it to be the truth. Because I know that we create and manifest things in this world with our language and our intentions. And my boy called me back and he's like, man, send me some information on this deal. Because what I did was I set the intention, and my boy, if the deal is what it is, he's going to go out there and find the money. And then this guy, they want to believe me, like everybody wants it to happen. But when they're talking to you, they're telling you what you need to understand to make it happen. Like, he's telling me, listen, we like you guys as buyers, but we need to understand how you're going to come up with the money. Now, in my head, I'm like, you can give us the money. That's actually how I'm going to do it. In my head, they're going to sell or finance us the problem buildings. We're going to sell off those other buildings to these other people that want to buy it. And then we're going to wait the 6 months to get the money to cover the debt. And if the government comes in like they're supposed to, they're going to finance everything. They're going to cover the debt. And I'm going to charge a 2% acquisition fee on it'll be $80 million or something like that. And I'm going to keep maybe 5-10% equity of the deal. Now, start doing the math on that. And that's with no cash, no credit, no money, just a high level of understanding. That's why I'm the real estate G. And I don't have the commitments right now, but my challenge is, if I can see, this stuff is easy, and it's too easy. But we've been conditioned to think that if it sounds too good to be true, it normally is, and that's not the truth. These white people are getting rich overnight. They starting these companies and selling them for 19 billion, 20 billion, some of them lying, raising all this money with lies. And I got a true situation that's set up, and the Lord gave me clarity on how to structure the thing and how to leverage. My mentor in real estate, he taught me leverage, but everybody stops at OPM, other people's money. What he's learned, I learned OPE, other people's everything. So I have the ability to study information, and I have the ability to listen and take notes. I have the ability to answer questions when I don't understand. And it actually, when you ask questions when you're ignorant, right, it gives other people an opportunity to demonstrate their intelligence, and it actually builds rapport. And they appreciate your vulnerability in asking the question. And that's how learning happens. What happens is we start looking at ourselves and we feel less than if we're stupid. But that's the whole definition of stupid or ignorant. It's the lack of information, lack of knowledge. And how do you get knowledge? You ask the question, you study, you read, you prepare yourself. And then that's how you leverage somebody else's knowledge. Hey man, you said something about this. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How that works? Oh yeah, this is how it works. You know? I'd be happy to. You know? Gerald, I'm trying to do this. Can you show me? Yeah, I'd be happy to. Because for me, like when I helped Denise and her mom, Miss Dorothy, close their first deal, and they made over 150. I personally never made over $150,000 on a flip. Close to, well, we did 127. 150. Yeah, 127. These ladies made over $160,000 on their first flip with 25 grand out of pocket. I had them in control of the property in 3 days, owning the property in within 2 weeks. And because we had so many options, that's why it took 9 months to sell it. Because they decided that first they tried to refinance it, and that was having a challenge. And so they ended up saying, look, we're just going to sell it. And so they sold it and walked with over 100 grand. And this stuff it's not hard. Like when I closed on my apartment building, my part of my process is I need to know what's required. Like, what do you need? That's what I ask. What do you need? They tell you what you need, and guess what? It's what you need, right? So now it's not a mystery. Then I say, okay, what's the rules? Like, do I have to have this? And this is what we need to understand. When we conduct business, businesses aren't individuals. Businesses are organizations. And they have different roles and responsibilities. They have different departments. They have different talent. You know, so you can, if you have bad credit and your husband or your son or your daughter or your aunt or your cousin has good credit, you can start a company, make them the CFO and or whatever, CEO or whatever, leverage their credit, use your credit profile to go access lines of credit, business lines of credit. Like, you can do that. But what happens is we think that we're not that important. You know, oh, I'll get started once I fix my credit. And I'm like, well, just get started. If credit is a necessity, then that means you just bring in a partner with the credit. Half of something is better than all or nothing. And the one thing that we don't get back is time. So how you invest your time is what's critical. And like for me, I'm investing my time in the book. I'm investing my time around people that are getting results that I want to get, you know, and I'm putting myself in positions where I can fail. Because what I learned about COVID is if we all have failures, we all make mistakes. And my attitude at this point is if I'm going to do something, I might as well do it big. Because my thing is, I haven't even did the math on it. I just discovered that in this conversation, just kind of revisiting the conversation that I had with Scott. And like a percentage of call it 50 million, 2 points. Let me see. That's $1 million. So it goes back to the question, what's keeping you, what does it cost you not to be making $1 million? Like when that stuff is possible. The dude just gave me the play. He didn't even know. He did. He really did. But I asked him the question and I almost didn't. I almost didn't because I didn't want him to reject me asking the question, you know. But I've been exposing myself to high level information, and I was just listening to Myron Golden, and he was just talking about how the mind, you know, works when it relates to like fear and things like that. Sometimes we don't say something because we anticipate a negative response, and so we're protecting ourselves from experiencing that negative response. But that's made up. We don't know. And so one of the books in my course is called What to Say, I believe. It's a YouTube book. It's a real short book, but it's important. And the reason why I use it to raise money is like if I said, if you needed $50,000 right now, right? And I said, who do you know that could lend you $50,000? Or who do you know that has the ability to lend you $50,000? A name popped in your head, right? But then what happens is you start putting in your thoughts and rationalizations about whether or not they would be willing to lend you the $50 or $50,000. I just said who has the ability to fulfill that request if they so choose to. And what we do is we start discounting stuff, and we should stop doing that. We should give people the opportunity to tell us no, because in creating that opportunity, we can ask more questions. Because if I said, you know, lend me 50,000, you're naturally going to say, well, what do you need it for? And if I said, well, you know, I'm getting into real estate, I got a mentor, and we just found this deal. You know, we can pick it up for what I believe is a steal. You know, we're gonna throw, you know, we can get it for 20,000. We're gonna throw 30,000 into it, and it's gonna be worth 100,000. And so I need 50,000. Then they're gonna be like, okay, well, what are you giving me if I give you the 50,000? So you could say, well, what do you want? What would you want? Or you could say, well, you know, my mentor said we could probably give you anywhere from 8 to 12% on your money. We'd only need it for like 6 months or 12 months. You know, I mean, what are you making at the bank? Or what are you making where it's at now? You know, and they're going to say, well, not 8 or 12%. You know, and I was like, listen, I don't need an answer right now. I got a couple of days, but, you know, let me give you some information about the deal. And then what do? I send them a damn slide, because I know that these founders make pitch decks and they raise millions of dollars. And if they can use pitch decks to raise millions of dollars, I could use a damn PowerPoint presentation to raise 50,000 on a deal that I'm going to stand to make 30,000 if I got to pay this person whatever. So what you need to, I'm going to leave you with this. The question you should always be asking yourself is, if money wasn't an issue, or if money was in abundance, available in abundance, what would be the next thing I'll have to do? What would be the next action I would have to take in order to accomplish the goal? Because that's what I'm asking myself. I'm not worried about the $50 million, because the $50 million is already there. They have the ability to seller finance me the deal. They just need a solution from me on how I'm going to service the debt. And that can happen on a $90 million deal, or it could happen on the everyday $200,000. And matter of fact, you guys have already been doing it. Because if you bought your home, that's what they was looking for. Hey, what's your credit? Well, what does credit tell you? How well you pay your bills. Where's your job? Let's verify your income. What does that tell you? The source of the revenue to pay your bills. That's all that is. So then when we look at conventional finance and hard money, right? Hard money is called asset-based lending. Why? Because they base the loan on the asset. See, the problem with the money people is they need operators. They need people to borrow the money multiply it and give it back. And they're checking for your ability to do that. So if you can communicate your ability to do that, you good. How I was able to handle that conversation is because I actually own a fund and I'm actually authorized to raise up to $50 million. And it's documented, got a website and everything. They don't need to know that I'm not using the fund to do that. Or I might use the fund to do that. I got to talk to my partner about it. But I understand the process, so I know that we didn't even win the bid yet, so I know they wasn't looking for me to write a check. So I just come to the conversation and I know what they need to hear. They need to hear that the money's not a problem, but it needs to make sense. And so when I tell them, listen, I'm here because the VA is the anchor client, and if we can solidify that, I'm willing to lend the money. And I'm telling them what they already know. They thinking that too. So that's how we get here. And like I said, man, this dude just gave me the game as I'm thinking about it. And I'm using the same, I'm a wholesale the situation, or we can do a collaborative type of sales situation. He's not going to tell me who else is involved, because he can't do that. But if I present a letter of intent where we collectively, so if the number is 80 million and we have multiple properties, and I say, okay, well, we're gonna buy all of them, but we're gonna sell off some of these to these different, and you guys facilitate that. If they're interested, you facilitate that. That's how we're gonna cultivate the money. And then that makes my $50 million play even better, because I think the lease from the government was somewhere around $500,000 a month. And so in real estate, you like to be about 1%. And the reason why I'm sharing it with you with big numbers is because we haven't been exposed to the big numbers, but the concepts are the same. Like, I'm using the same logic that I did on my first property, which was a 2-family house. I used the same logic to buy 136 units. I use the same logic because the fundamentals is the same. This is how it all makes sense. So, I know we're a little over, and I always plan to go at least to 10, even though it's scheduled for 9:30. So I want to open it up to some questions, get some feedback, maybe answer some questions. If anybody's working on any leads right now and they have some questions, we can get in that too for a minute. Hope this has been helpful.
Mr. G.
What's up?
How you doing, sir?
Good. Who's that, Benny?
Yeah, man. I was on a flight, man, so I missed the class. I just called to find out, is this recorded, or can I get it in a recording? Or
so I have the audio recorded. My computer wouldn't allow me to. I need to get some more space on my computer, but I did record the audio, so I can send that to you. I'll make that available for everybody.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
I know that would help some.
Yeah. Where you at?
I'm in Atlanta now.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have a quick question.
Go right ahead.
You had mentioned the lady who sold the property. I've been hearing a lot about capital gains.
Yep.
What is it and how to avoid it?
All right. So be mindful of what you seek to avoid, right? Don't focus too much energy on that. Just understand what it is. So capital gains is the gains from the sale of an asset. So you just bought a house for $115. Say you throw 30 into it, you're in it for $130, $145. Say you sell it for $200,000 and you make $40,000 on it. you just had a capital gains of $40,000, and the IRS is then due, I believe it would be 30% long-term, short-term capital gains. I can find out exactly what short-term capital gain rate is, but I believe it's 30%. Now, if you hold the property for 12 months and a day, then it is considered short-term capital gains, and I believe that's 20%. That's why the BRRRR method, right? The buy, renovate, rent, refinance. That's why that method is good, because when you refinance to pull out your equity, you're leveraging debt, which is non-taxable. So there is no requirement to pay a capital gains. And as long as you have a tenant servicing the debt, it's a win. Make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I appreciate it. I think I'll do the refinance instead. I forgot all about that.
Yeah. But sometimes just so the thing about capital gains too is again, if you're operating in the business, and obviously this is something you need to work out with your accountant. But as you conduct business, you're open to deductions as well, and so there may be different ways to offset some of those gains. Like right now I'm putting together a play. I'm doing a mastermind group, and it's a $6,000 buy-in. What I'm creating is it's called a hedge fund incubator, and basically what it is I'm finding five. Is it five? Yeah, I'm finding 5 people to invest $6,000. Because what I'm doing right now is I'm in the process of setting up a vacation rental business in Colombia. And so my boy, he asked the question, well, if you needed to put together 30 grand, how would you do it? And so one of my thoughts was, well, I would raise the money. I would borrow it. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I borrow it, then what type of rate of return can I provide on it? So I started running the numbers. So me and my partner, he's going to be helping me run the deal. He has some relatives in Colombia. They're going to help us arbitrage some units. Out there in Colombia, if you're willing to pay the year in advance, you can get apartments at discounted prices. And then, because of the differential in the currency, your dollar goes a longer way. And so I got a bunch of buddies that travel to Colombia all the time. And so I'm like, look, if I can get 5 of them to put up $6,000, what me and my buddy put together last night was we'll do a 3-year commitment. Everybody puts up $6 grand, and we'll pay out 12% on the $6 grand, but it also includes all expense trip to Colombia, because we're actually renting the apartment, so we'll have room and board taken care of, and we can just build that in to the cost of raising the money. And then after the 2 years, we'll have enough to repay the initial contribution, or we can roll it over and continue to do that. And because it's a mastermind group, it's a business trip, because it's an investment, it's a business trip. So now that traveling is tax deductible, and they're basically traveling for free. Well, they're going to just have to pay for their flights, I believe, is how we're going to do it. But they can write off the flights, because again, it's a business trip. So when you start learning how the rules work and how the game is played, it's a whole different life. And I know these dudes. I know I can convince them to a few of them to do it, because they've already spent that type of money there, and it ain't coming back. In this situation, they're going to get their money back with interest, and they also have some tax benefits as well. And so, that's how the rich keep getting richer, because they know the rules of the game, and they play the game a whole different way. That's why they're flying on private jets. That's why they're eating at the best restaurants. That's why they're doing all of these things, because it's how you do it that makes the difference. We get distracted by what they're doing, and we're using our logic to interpret what the actions that they're taking, rather than asking the question, hey man, I actually asked Grant, why'd you buy the plane? Did you do that to floss? And he's like, nah, man, when you make $100 million in a business, there's only so many things that you can write off, and so this was an asset that I could write off, and now I had the ability to fly where I need to fly, and then what Grant does is he starts making offers. So if you buy into one of his mastermind courses, then he includes a helicopter ride when you're in Miami, and stuff like that. So now it becomes a asset, income producer. It's a perk that he adds to his packages, and it's all in the course of doing business. And so, now he has the luxury and he gets to write it off, when otherwise he would just send that money to the IRS. Like, that's why these people be having foundations. That's why they're philanthropists, because I would rather invest money in causes that I believe in and get the social equity than to send it to the IRS. Like, that's the game that that's being played at a high level. And again, we're not exposed to this information, or in the past we haven't been, but God has opened up some of these doors, and I'll be in there taking notes for real. So, and I don't mind sharing it. We do got to keep it on the low though. So, but yeah, I really appreciate you guys. This is going to be an every week thing. And I'm working with Devon to do some other things to kind of help with the automation and the marketing and really getting into the business. So I'll keep you posted on how that works. This particular cohort was set up for 6 weeks, but I think we're going to be modifying that in the future for newcomers. But as we progress and do deals, like, the goal is to make build wealth and help people, because even though we're going to be making some money, like, I'm excited to help Ms. V with Shaitan, and that's the good part about it, is like, she's going to be happy. She's not got to worry about her mortgage or whatever, and we just have another asset. And like, that's how it's designed, like, the Lord blesses you based on your ability, and all you need to be is a good steward. Like, that's really what this conversation is about, is stewardship, and so any questions before we close out? So what I'm going to do with the recording is I'll post it in the Telegram. I'm working on building out a Facebook group, but I think the Telegram is going to be one of the primary sources of communication moving forward. I've seen it work in a number of different programs, and at some point what I'm working to is creating an app. So everything will probably migrate to that platform, or a membership site, or it might even be like a hybrid of that. So, but I'll keep you guys posted, because my intention is that, as you create your own financial game plans, anything that I'm doing, if you want to duplicate it, it's just a conversation. Just let me know. So.
When do you have an next call, G?
It'll be every Tuesday night, from 8 to 9:30.
Okay, cool. So
Yep.
Next time I know.
Yep. So that's the time moving forward. Rather than trying to get multiple days throughout the week, I just committed this night. And one of the things that I do is repetition. I'm formulating an actual course, and once I have it created, you guys will get access to that. And the intention there is it'll really go over the mechanics of these creative acquisition strategies, like the wholesaling and the seller financing and the lease options and, the subject to and the novation. And it'll go into how those things work. But until then, I'm going to just continue to talk about the different concepts, and, it's repetition. And then when you see me implementing it, because that's really the goal, is how do we have these conversations? How do we implement these strategies in real life, in real time? And, as we close, what you guys should be really doing is really expanding your network, having that who do you know conversation, and cultivating buyers lists and things like that. If you have real estate professionals like attorneys or accountants or realtors, start working out, letting them know that you're in the business. Like, that's the biggest thing. All of you guys are buyers. Don't worry about the money. The money's there. You need to start getting properties so that we can start practicing going through the numbers, getting leads so we can start practicing going through the different scenarios and having the conversations. And like with anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And the thing about this is, as we progress, we're really building wealth, because like the deals, like even with the Peoria deal, that was a pre-foreclosure, and with less than $5,000, well, it'll probably be 10 at the end of the day. But even with that, the formula is, so if I net $400 a month times 12, that's $4,800 divided by 10,000. That's 48% on my money. It's a 48% cash on cash return. Now, why that's important, right, is in society, they have us positioned to think that between 7 and 10% or 7 and 12% is a good return on your investment. But then you got these investors that are out there making 48%, or in some cases 400%. And the like these opportunities exist for us. So if you had a credit card that you could borrow $10,000 on, it would be worth it to use the credit card to buy the property, knowing that once you got a Section 8 tenant, you got $400 coming in. That's got to be enough to cover the payment at the very least. So maybe you don't net 48%, maybe you only net 12%, but that's 12% on somebody else's money. And financial freedom, financial independence happens when you have enough passive income coming in to cover your basic living expenses. So that's why we start with the budget, because once you understand what it costs you to live your lifestyle, we can start creating assets to provide the resources to cover the cost of living your lifestyle. And now you're financially independent. So I don't care how old you are, if you're in your 20s or if you're in your 60s, like, you could retire rich, and it don't take all day. But we are conditioned to think, oh, I'm too old, or I don't have time, and that's BS. You just don't have time to operate on the same information you've been operating on. You need to accelerate your learning curve and get with somebody that's where you are and ask questions. I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Pursuit of Happiness, but in that movie, Chris, he asked the guy with the Ferrari, something like, what's your name and what do you do, or something like that. Like what do you do? What do you do to what did you do to earn that? Because it's like, if if this is what you do to earn that, then if I learn how to do that, then I can earn that. Like that's how this, what did I do? I set an intention. I got a mentor that's been there before, and I just, followed instructions. And I put myself in positions where I could ask questions. I made some mistakes along the line that cost me money, but education ain't free. It's going to cost you something. And the job is to learn the lesson. So, and then the right question is, well, what is it costing me not making $1 million? And for a lot of us, $1 million, it's not about the money. That, to me, that speaks to the possibility. That's how many of us come from environments where we have very low expectations put on us, or we put very low expectations on ourselves because of where we come from. And that's a lie, because like I said, anybody could do what I'm doing. Like my student Brandon, he didn't even have to know how to do what I did for him. He did what he needed to do, which was hire me to help him with the situation. And then because he's operating on his experience, he's not willing to take the deal down, because he's looking at it from his point of view rather than asking himself the question, well, why does Gerald see this as an opportunity? Like, what are you getting out of it? And we've had the conversations, but I'm not going to force him to increase his, like, nope. You got two options. You could pay me the $5,000 that we agreed on, or if not, then I'll just keep the property and I'll put the money in it myself and do it. And I know that is a cash of, between a 48 to, even if it was 25% cash on cash return, like that's double digits. That's one. And so you got the percentage, but then like that's an extra couple $100. So now if I wanted to go out and get a new car, the house is paying for the car, or that's a property that's paying for a bill, like that's the kind of logic that we got to start thinking in. Get 5 to 6 assets and they all cover it. If you do your budget, matter of fact, this is the homework. Look at your budget and figure out what consistent bills you got, right? And then over the course of the year, we're gonna see how many assets we can create on your balance sheet to cover each one of those expenses. That's the challenge. There you go. So, 10:03. Appreciate your time. I gotta get this little girl something to eat. You guys all have my number, so feel free to use it. If you have some leads or something, we need to make some calls, definitely let me know. Don't feel like you're bothering me, because this is what I do all day. So, text is always better. Text me, hey, are you available? And that's what works. Messages, I don't really listen to messages because I'm always on the go. So I would prefer a text message or a call. I'll send you my number if I haven't already. In fact, yeah, I'll text you. I'll just post it in the Telegram too. So, all right, I'm shutting it down. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you guys next week, or in them clubhouse streets, as they say.
Thank you. All right, Mr. G, take care, bro.
No doubt.